Good evening, family. This is Dr. Kia Pruitt. Today is still Tuesday, February the 7th, 2023, and the time is 11:11 p.m. Family, brothers and sisters, we are gathered here today in a moment and a time of somberness to lay to rest the Internal Revenue Services. The scripture says, to everything there is a time and a season, a time to every purpose under the heavens. There's a time to sing and a time to dance, a time to laugh and a time to cry, a time to build up and a time to tear down. Family, we're gathered here today to talk about an entity that we know as being the IRS, which has been friends to some and enemies to others. And because of the doings of the IRS that has not been in favor of we the people, we come today to announce the death of the Internal Revenue Services. And for that reason, we therefore commit the IRS, its body, its entity, its laws, and its penalties to the ground, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, looking for the blessed hope when the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout and with the voice of the archangel and with the trump of God. And the dead in Christ shall rise first. Family, let us have a moment of silence as we mourn the end to the IRS and commit them to the grave, to the ground. A moment of silence, please. Let us bow our heads and speak to the Lord and let him know how we feel about this blessed day. Moment of silence. Organist, 1, 2, 3. Family, I pray that you were able to talk to the Lord about your feelings about the Internal Revenue Services. Now, as you speak to the Lord about your deep thoughts and your experiences with the IRS, we're going to have a speaker to just give us a few words about what's going on and how the world is feeling, and those that are important, how they are feeling about the great Internal Revenue Services. Take your time, family members. Take your time to reflect on how the IRS has been important to you in your life, what they've done, what they haven't done, and what they should have done. Just a few more moments as we wait for the speaker to come to the podium.
Republicans have passed their first bill. In their very first legislative act last night, the new GOP majority passed a measure to repeal $80 billion in Internal Revenue Service funding. The Family and Small Business Taxpayer Protection Act passed on a straight party line vote, 221 to 210. Among the critics was Virginia 3rd District Democrat Bobby Scott, who said the bill would protect wealthy tax.
Family, my name is the Reverend Dr. Kia Marie Pruitt, and I'm here today to talk to you all about the ending of the Internal Revenue Services. So I hope you've enjoyed that very short service as we prepare to lay to rest the Internal Revenue, also known as the IRS, that unlawful entity that attached itself to the federal government, pretending as if they cared about we the people. So welcome everybody. This is Dr. Kia Pruitt. Welcome to the Joyous Rising Show. I'm so happy to have you all here tonight. I know it's late in the evening. I thought we'd just have some fun to talk about the irresponsible, yes, suffering that we call the IRS, or Internal Revenue Services. So welcome back, everybody. I hope you all are doing well. I know that it's late, but we had to give our, pay our dues and say rest in peace, or rest in hell, or rest wherever you're gonna go, IRS. But family, let me tell you all something. I just wanted to give my proper respects to the Internal Revenue Services and wear my black and make sure I was, looking nice for the service, because I am, as some of you know, an ordained minister, an ordained evangelist. And this was the opportunity for me to utilize my gifts and present to the people an opportunity to mourn and to have moments of silence as we talk about what's going on with the Internal Revenue Services. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good night, depending upon where you're checking in from, family. Keep checking in. I'm so happy to have you all here again this evening. I love you all so much. So guess what's going on in the news, family, as we prepare to lay the IRS to rest? There's a lot going on in the news. First of all, the GOP has been attacking the IRS vehemently. It's one of the first things that the GOP, or the Republican Party, decided to do at the beginning of the year was to announce that they were cutting their funding. So let's look at this. The IRS, as you all heard in this video, and I will submit this to you and put this in the description section. The IRS had an idea that they will hire almost 90,000 agents in order to assault us and shoot us. They had a mission to shoot and kill any of us that they felt were unlawfully not paying taxes, or illegally not paying taxes to their corporate unlawful entity. So I'm going to share that with you in the description section. But we want to show you how the GOP started to attack the Internal Revenue Services. I don't know if you all heard about this, but the House Republicans voted earlier this year on a bill to abolish the IRS and eliminate income taxes. However, before that, they stated that they would defund them. So you see here, this article was published earlier this year. I'll find the date for you. But what it says is House Republicans, published January the 10th, 2023. House Republicans to vote on a bill abolishing the IRS, eliminating income tax. Voting on abolishing the IRS is part of a deal that Speaker McCarthy and House Freedom Caucus had made. So you see this defund the IRS. This is something that is very important for them to do. And it comes on the heels of House Resolution 24, I believe it was. And House Resolution 24 was about paying attention to and monitoring the IRS and then completely abolishing the IRS. So that House resolution or that bill was introduced under number 45. So on the heels of that comes the GOP or the Republicans, which have totally taken over the House, to say we're going to defund the IRS because they are unlawful and because taxation is heavily burdening the people. So this was first on Fox. Republicans in the House of Representatives will vote on a bill that would abolish the Internal Revenue Services, eliminating the national income tax and replace it with the national consumption tax. As you all recall, according to the National Economic Security and Reformation Act, also known as NASARA, the IRS has to completely be eliminated. And that will eliminate all taxes, not just income taxes, but all taxes except for a 17% tax on big ticket non-essential items. So we see that NASARA is coming into play. So anytime somebody tells you that NASARA is not real, you can point to House Resolution 24, actually House Resolutions 24 and 25, where they were monitoring the IRS and the Federal Reserve System. And actually the bill said that will it completely eliminate both of them. So let's get back to the article, family, because my job here is to bring you good news and to encourage you and to inspire you to create the most amazing, magnificent life that you desire and deserve. But in order to do that, we have to bring you the news to help you to become proactive. Okay, so let's get back into this juicy article. Fox News Digital has learned that the House will be voting on Georgia Republican Representative Buddy Carter's introduced Fair Tax Act. And this aims to reel in the IRS and remove the national tax as well as other taxes and replace them with a single consumption tax. The vote on the bill was part of a deal between House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who's a representative of California, a Republican, and members of the House Freedom Caucus. Can you see that we're preparing for an amazing time? A time where we will celebrate our prosperity, freedom, and our sovereignty. And this bill was pushed forward in Representative Kevin McCarthy's quest for gavel last week. Now, why am I bringing that news up to you today? I'm bringing it before you today because there was a very interesting article that came out that the IRS is telling people not to file their taxes. Can you believe that? So let me show you how the IRS is actually asking people or encouraging people not to file their taxes. Now, they're only saying that certain people shouldn't file their taxes, but we need to look into this quite seriously and see why they're really saying this, because they'll give us one reason, but we know that they're just trickling down information little by little until people finally get it and until the IRS is completely annihilated. So this was published just a few hours ago by MSN.com. So this is a mainstream media outlet, news outlet, telling people that the IRS has told millions of Americans to hold off on tax filing. Now, this is why I'm going to go into what the Republicans are doing to attack the IRS and completely annihilate it. So, family, yes, we are putting the IRS to rest, getting rid of them, laying them down, and saying adios, and committing them back to the place from whence they come. So the IRS, CBS News, printed and published by MSN.com. The IRS tells millions of Americans to hold off on tax filing. Very interesting. The IRS are asking millions of taxpayers in California, Colorado, and other states that issued tax rebates last year to hold off on filing taxes. Isn't it interesting that one of the states that they're asking to hold off is actually California? And I believe that we just read that is where Kevin McCarthy comes from. So you see how he's moving to do things in his state first, and then it will spread out. But what I find particularly interesting about this article is that it says California. The IRS is asking millions of taxpayers in California, Colorado, and other states to hold off on filing taxes, but it doesn't specify what these other states are. Okay, so we're just going to have to put on our thinking caps and I guess make that decision for ourselves. So let's see what they say. Let's scroll down and see the reason. The agency said that it's seeking to clarify whether those tax rebates and the special refunds are considered taxable income. That's weird. So they want to try to clarify if tax rebates and special refunds are considered taxable income. You all don't know this. You all don't create policies, procedures, and rules for what's what's a tax rebate and what's a special refund. But okay, we'll play along. We expect to provide additional clarity for as many states and taxpayers as possible next week, the IRS said on Friday. About 16 million Californian residents received middle-class tax refund checks of $350 per eligible taxpayer last year, part of a relief package designed by the state to help residents cope with soaring inflation at a time when the state had a budget surplus. Yeah, I remember hearing about that, of how some California residents actually received a check, like almost a stimulus check, to help them to cope with soaring inflation. And I believe California might have been the only state or one of the other states. However, it does say some of the other states like Colorado, Illinois, and South Carolina authorized tax rebates last year as their coffers were buoyed by strong economic growth and federal pandemic aid. So what they're saying is they're not sure what to count as a tax rebate and special funds. So they're asking some certain states to hold off on filing your taxes. Very, very interesting. Very interesting that the IRS is doing this. Now, I'm not sure if they're just trying to find a reason to put off people filing taxes until they find a way to bring it out that the IRS has been decimated, defunded, and completely annihilated. But you and I both know, we all know that according to some of our people on the ground, or what we call them boots on the ground, the IRS headquarters, as well as some other three-letter agencies, are actually empty. Those buildings are completely empty. So we know that they're not in there. And we also know that number 45 put the duties of the IRS and the Federal Reserve underneath the United States Treasury Department. So why did he put those duties of the IRS, the Internal Revenue Services, and the Federal Reserve under the umbrella of the United States Treasury Department? As a matter of fact, you'll see when you get information and letters from the IRS, at the top of the envelope, it will say United States Treasury Department now. The reason 45 did that is because he even said it, that he would annihilate or completely get rid of both of those entities. And the reason that he's going to do that is because they are not federal and they are not part of the republic. So as 45 and the white hats of the military, also known as the Grand Army of the Republic, are decimating those three-letter organizations and all those entities that attached itself to the United States Incorporated, then they're also restoring the republic and our lawful government and the Constitution for the Republic of the United States of America. So let's get back into some very, very interesting news about what's going on. So I guess we'll just have to try to figure out which of those states they're talking about when they talk about the IRS saying millions of Americans need to hold off on paying their taxes or filing their taxes. But I will tell you what we've been telling people or encouraging them to do, and some people have actually done it, was if you, now, I'm not a tax preparer, I'm not a financial advisor, but what we were telling people, especially right after the pandemic, was to write the IRS and tell them that you would like to have them to forgive your debt if you owe the IRS. And what we heard from people was some people said they actually received a response from the IRS saying that their debt was forgiven. Now, the Bible says you have not because you ask not. Yes? So you can actually use your courage and your sovereignty to write them if you desire to and say, I'm not going to pay the IRS, or I'm not able, or you can say I'm insolvent, however you decide to write the letter, but ask for forgiveness. Can you forgive this debt? It's kind of like um, when you allegedly owe a bill and something that you owe has been reported to the credit bureau, and they might put a negative collection against you. You by law can write those credit reporting agencies and say, unless, according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, Section 609, unless you can produce the original contract with my wet ink signature stating that this debt belongs to me, according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, Section 609, you must remove that from my credit report. And they have to do it. But a lot of people weren't courageous enough to do that. A lot of people didn't know to do it. And then when people came to hear about it, they weren't courageous enough. And then some people weren't aware that that's what these credit reporting, not credit reporting, but credit repair specialists do. That's what Lexington law firm did. That's what, again, credit repair people do. And I know because I am a certified credit repair specialist, certified, okay, bona fide, pass all the tests. And I've done it. I've written letters to free a whole lot of people and had those collections taken off, judgments taken off, bankruptcies taken off. Okay. And I did it for free. You know, Lexington Credit Repair and all these places. I don't do it any longer, but they charged people $99 a month until it was done. My point is, sometimes you just have to write a letter because there's always a remedy. There's always a way out. There's always a way to get around the system that they create, and they give you that out. They're just waiting on you to use it. So until the IRS completely eliminates it or annihilates this whole income tax thing, if you desire, you could write them a letter and tell them to forgive the debt. But we heard from my good friend Metroid that he had $23,000 worth of IRS debt forgiven, canceled, done away with. Okay, so it's happening, family. It is completely happening. Now, as I said earlier, it's coming, all of this is coming on the heels of House Resolution 25. That was 116th Congress, 2019 through 2020. And what this resolution or this bill was, it was a bill to promote freedom, fairness, and economic opportunity by repealing the income tax and other taxes, abolishing the Internal Revenue Service, and enacting a national sales tax to be administered primarily by the states. So you see, we talked about that the other day, how they're turning over power back to the states. Why? Because the federal government, as you know it, is not federal at all. It's defunct. It's done away with. Okay, it's gone bye-bye. This so-called federal government was just a group of bloodline families that usurped authority from the republic, our lawful government. They created their own constitution called the Constitution of the United States Incorporated. They incorporated themselves in 1871. They were registered in Delaware as a religious nonprofit organization, and they had their own constitution, their own legality, statutes, codes, and policies. And that's why you hear people say that things are legal. It means it's legal according to the statutes, codes, policies, and procedures of that corporate entity that is not governed by the Constitution for the United States of America, the Republic. It's governed by its own self, but it is not federal. So when you decimate and get rid of this so-called fake federal government, then the powers are returned back to the states. Because originally, states all operated as their own entity, and states operated as countries, like kind of like countries. And the state was governed by mayors, which were women originally under the Iroquois and the indigenous peoples. They were actually women. So mayors are so-called what we call governors. So each state kind of operates again like a country, and those mayors or governors, for lack of a better word, were the president of those states. So that's why when you see laws being abolished or overturned like RVW, they turn back the power over to the states. So you see, this is evidence that the republic is being restored. Now, let's get back to the news about the Internal Revenue Services. They are being completely annihilated. So again, we talked about how they told millions of Americans, the IRS did, to hold off on filing taxes. So House Republicans, we talked about this, are defunding the IRS. And again, this here is Fox News. So this here was published January 10th, 2023, House Republicans to vote on a bill to abolish the IRS, eliminating taxes. I am going to send that to you all today or put it in the description section, but it says Republicans in the House of Representatives will vote on a bill that will abolish the Internal Revenue Services, eliminate the national income tax, and replace it with a national consumption tax. Fox News Digital has learned that the House will be voting on Georgia Republican Representative Buddy Carter's reintroduced, so he's reintroducing this, he introduced it before, Fair Tax Act that aims again to reel in the IRS and remove the national income tax as well as other taxes and replace it with the single consumption tax. The vote on the bill was made as part of the deal, again, between House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and members of the House Freedom Caucus. Just reiterating this for those that are just joining in. So listen to what he said. I want to talk about this because I don't know if you all realize that the IRS hired 87,000 agents, and we're going to get into that article. So here we go. Instead of adding 87,000 new agents to weaponize the IRS against small business owners and against middle Americans, this bill will eliminate the need for the department entirely by simplifying the tax code with provisions that work for the American people and encourage growth and innovation, Carter said. Armed unelected bureaucrats should not have the power over your paycheck than you do, he said. They should not have more power over your paycheck than you do. So as a former small business owner, I understand the unnecessary burden our failing income tax system has on Americans, said Representative Jeff Duncan in a statement. The Fair Tax Act eliminates the tax code. It replaces the income tax with a sales tax. Remember, we talked about that. And it abolishes the abusive Internal Revenue Services. If enacted, this will invigorate the American taxpayer and help more Americans to achieve the American dream. What's the American dream? The American dream to get married, to have children, to have a right to the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to buy a home, to grow your families, to start a businesses and produce income and generational wealth for your posterity. That is the American dream. But if the Internal Revenue Service and other services continue to tax us over and over again and burden us, we cannot breathe, neither can we live. So what are they talking about, this weaponization of the Internal Revenue Services? I don't know if you all knew this, but they had hired 87,000 agents and gave them the license to shoot and kill Americans if they did not pay their taxes. It's troubling. And I did report on this as soon as they made that announcement. And let me show you that video in case you would like to see that video whenever you get the chance. And in that video, I named it Trump Declares War, the CCP warns the Democrats, the Japanese government quits, and the IRS hires killers. Billionaire buys gold. I said this report was extensive. So I talked about how Trump declared war against the FBI, how China predicted Trump's FBI raid would lead to a second January 6th incident. I reported on spies who were watching Trump and how they had spies actually in his home. And here I also talked about the description of the 87,000 new IRS criminal investigators. So go and watch this video when you get a chance. I also talked about how JP Morgan traders were convicted, how former congressman and FBI agents trainee was indicted for insider trading. I mean, this is extensive. How Japanese governments resigned its entire government, how the former New York governor demands answers regarding the FBI raid on Trump's home, about Texan billionaires, how they dropped 50 million on silver and gold, and just a whole lot I covered. So go look at that video, because what's more important is how the IRS decided they were going to weaponize that agency against the American people. And that was published on August the 13th, 2020. I, again, will put that in the description section. So family, I always do my best to show you proof of what I'm talking about. Sometimes I'm not able to put certain things in the description section because it seems like the algorithms even pick up type words. If you say too much about them taking down the deep state, or if I mention 45's name, or if I talk, sometimes even if I talk about gold and return it to a gold standard, some of those videos will actually trigger the algorithms and they will demonetize the video or partially demonetize the video. But what's more pressing for me is to get this information out to you. So we know that the IRS is being done away with, and we know that the reason why they're doing that is because 46, and I produced a video earlier to say that he just keeps screwing up, but he allowed this to happen under his watch. So let's look into how the IRS investigators criminal and how they criminalized, the IRS criminalized its agents. Here you go. I wanted you to see this. Everybody hadn't heard of this. This is on jobs.irs.gov. IRS careers. This actually, family, that actually is a job description of the agents. So before I let you read this job description, let me tell you about how the IRS, or what they said they were going to do with these agents. So I want you to see the job description, but it's important to note that they actually announced that they were hiring these agents before they gave the job description. And I don't think it's in here. Let's see if I can find that for you. Well, I don't see it. Oh, here it is. Yes. Here you go. That's an ad. Emboldened IRS demands new hires be willing to KILL delete Americans. You read it right. Emboldened IRS demands new hires be willing to delete Americans. See IRS rifle team training photos and more. So this was published August the 12th, 2022. And that's why I did that broadcast. And I will leave my broadcast in the description section, as I said earlier. So isn't that interesting that they would weaponize the IRS against we the people? And this is happening under 46. which is why the Republicans, the GOP, the white hats and the military, 45 behind the scenes are completely getting rid of this unlawful institution because they have gone rogue. I mean, they were already rogue and unlawful, a corporate entity, a business, okay, with its own rules, its own so-called laws or legalities, policies, and procedures. But now, not only were they taxing us, but they're giving agents permission to delete us. Just 2 days after the IRS, the article states, 2 days after, the IRS ran a help wanted ad that demanded new hires be willing to delete Americans as part of collecting tax money. Illegitimate AG Merrick Garland goes on live TV and lectures the American people, demanding they stop bullying the FBI and DOJ. Garland astonishingly claims to be upholding the rule of law as his lawless cabal of army tyrants run roughshod across America, terrorizing us, terrorizing anyone connected to number 45 or the America First movement. As this is happening, the IRS is building a massive army. You hear that? A massive army of heavily armed executioners whose job descriptions require that they be willing to fire upon and delete private American citizens. The audacity. They must be laid to rest. They had to be laid to rest. A recent job posting on usajobs.gov, okay, this is a government hiring site, listed the major duties of the new IRS employees as including a willingness to use deadly force to fire upon American citizens and delete them. No doubt the dangerous assignments described by the IRS, including assaulting and deleting American citizens, then confiscating their property. So they wanted this. This is what their assignment was: assault us, delete us, and then confiscate our property. I've never heard of anything like this in my life being permitted in this country, okay? This free country. Notably, the IRS doesn't need to exist at all. Like that, it doesn't need to exist at all since taxes do not even fund the government, the article says. America is so deep in debt, and we know that because it just reached its debt ceiling as of January 19, 2023. It reached a debt ceiling of $31 trillion. At least that's what's documented. We know it's probably closer to 100 trillion, but we'll play along. So we know that they just reached their debt ceiling. America is so deep in debt that it's mostly funded by money printing, not tax collection, the article states. Taxes are not in any way necessary to keep the United States government funded. It can simply print as much money as it needs in order to fund itself, essentially without cost, because there's nothing backing what they're printing, right? There's no gold backing the fiat that they're printing. So listen to this: the IRS rifle teams and police impersonators. So look at this. This is the training. They bragged that the IRS rifle fire teams and the IRS police shooters were taking aims at rows of targets that represent American taxpayers. These photos were taken from the IRS report, which signally celebrates the mass shooting of Americans or deleting of Americans in cold blood. You see that? Can you believe this? Yeah, under 46. And I think the reason why they allowed that to be published is to awaken people to say, no, we've got to get rid of this rogue administration. We've got to annihilate this branch of the United States Incorporated, also known as the IRS. So agents were actually being trained to delete Americans, and they were impersonating policy enforcers by wearing shirts that said POLICE. Even though they have zero actual police authority. They're not the police. They are runaway, power-hungry, thuggish federal agency that's building its own private paramilitary force to go to war on the American people. So this is why, you know, other than the fact, yeah, other than the fact that they're unlawfully taxing people, because that's not permitted by the Constitution for the United States, but they were allowed to be trained to fire upon us, to delete us. Yeah, they got snipers. Who ever heard of such a thing? Who in the world has ever heard of such a thing as the government weaponizing itself, or its corporations, its agencies actually weaponizing itself against us? So let's get back into let's actually take a look, family, at, if we can find that again, the job description. This is crazy to me. Let me see if I can get to the job description. The job description of the IRS. I lost you for a minute. Okay, here we go. Keep talking to each other in the chat, family, while I look for this job description. I think we just went over that. Let's see. I'm not sure. I think we just did that. So yeah, I'm looking for the job description. Here we are, special agents. Here's the job description on the government site, jobs.irs.gov. We're hiring more special agents. Who are we? This is, I can't believe, this is the law enforcement branch of the IRS. Really? Who are we? The Criminal Investigations CI is the law enforcement branch of the IRS. Our mission is to serve the American public by investigating potential criminal violators or criminal violations of the Internal Revenue Code. Remember, I talked about statutes and codes. That's what the incorporation, the United States corporation, has: statutes, codes, policies, and that's why they have police officers or policy enforcers. They don't work for we the people. They don't work for the republic. They work for the corporate entity. So the CI is the law enforcement branch of the IRS, and their mission was to serve the American public by investigating potential criminal violations of the Internal Revenue Code and related financial crimes in a manner that fosters confidence in the tax system and compliance with the law. Well, that's not the law. That's a legality. The law is the Constitution for the United States, the Republic of the United States of America. That's the law of the land, not legality, statutes, and codes of the IRS. But okay, they think we're dumb. As a special agent, the job description says you will combine your accounting skills with law enforcement skills to investigate financial crimes. Special agents are duly sworn law enforcement officers who are trained to follow the money. In other words, they're auditing us by following the money and seeing what we're doing with our money, no matter what the source. All income earned, both legal and illegal, has the potential of becoming involved in crimes which fall within an investigative jurisdiction of the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit. Because of the expertise required to conduct these complex financial investigations, the IRS special agents are considered the premier financial investigators for the federal government. Remember, I told you the federal government is an unlawful entity that has to be completely annihilated, or that had to be completely annihilated, because it is. And when you annihilate the federal government, then you turn over powers to the states. So that was the job description of these 85,000 or so agents that were hired by the IRS. But the GOP said, we're going to defund the IRS, take away money from the IRS, and then we're going to vote to completely abolish the IRS. So I needed to show you all, yeah, they're money grabbers. Just to give you a background of what the IRS had been doing behind the scenes, unbeknownst to many Americans. So here we go. We talked about how the House Republicans voted to abolish the IRS. And so let's see. Here's where they say they were getting rid of the funding. This was published by CNBC. House Republicans vote to strip the IRS funding following their pledge to repeal nearly $80 billion approved by Congress. Family, friends, Congress approved $80 billion to the IRS, and it was pledged to them in order to hire these killers, in order to hire these special CI agents to delete Americans who were not paying taxes, or to delete Americans once they followed the money and I guess figured out that maybe you were doing something with the money you shouldn't have been doing. I'm not quite sure what they were trying to investigate us for, or why they had hired these agents. Like, what would they say? You have the power within you to just delete Americans because they weren't taxing a certain amount, a certain portion of their income. And it said no matter what type of income, this income had to be reported and investigated. So the House Republicans voted to strip the IRS funding after they had a pledge had been made to repeal nearly $80 billion approved by Congress. This again was January 10th, 2023. We're bringing all this up because the IRS just announced that they're telling millions of Americans not to file their taxes, and are pretending like it's because they're not sure how to deal with or how to decide what's a tax exemption and what is not. So they're trying to figure out their rules. But we know behind the scenes that this is an orchestrated effort by the white hats and the Grand Army of the Republic to get in the consciousness of the people to not file taxes. They're getting us ready for not having to file taxes, period. So that's why the IRS is making this announcement. They said it was Colorado, California, Illinois, and some other states, but they didn't say what states explicitly did not have to file taxes. So just keep your eyes on the news and expect more information to come out about Americans not having to pay taxes. House Republicans, on Monday night voted to slash funding for the IRS. Again, this was about January the 10th, following a pledge to repeal nearly $80 billion approved by Congress last year. However, the measure doesn't have the support to pass in a Democratic-controlled Senate, according to them. So they say, oh, but we're going to get this done, trust me. And the White House has already opposed the bill. We don't care about the White House because that's not the lawful government anyway. House Republicans on Monday night voted to slash funding for the IRS following a pledge from newly elected Speaker Kevin McCarthy. He's really been busy lately to repeal the money approved by Congress last year. Passing along party lines, the bill will rescind tens of billions of dollars that was allocated to the agency, to this three-letter unlawful corporate entity that was attached to the Federal Reserve and the United States Incorporated. Tens of billions of dollars were allocated to the IRS. But this bill would rescind that money over the next decade through the Inflation Reduction Act passed in August. The measure doesn't have the support they claim to pass the Democratic-controlled Senate. You see how they like to spin it? They'll show you the news, but then they'll say, oh, don't worry about it. It doesn't have the support of the Democrats, so it's not going to happen. It doesn't have the support to pass in the Democratic-controlled Senate, and the White House opposed the bill in a statement released on Monday. It's not going to become a law, but it makes a very strong political statement, said Mark Everson, a former IRS commissioner and current vice chairman at Alliance Group, noting that the partisan IRS divide isn't good for the agency's long-term stability. Now, they're going to tell you that it's not going to pass, but we know that God is in control. We know that the white hats are in control, and we can see also. Thank you. Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate that. We can see that Things are being done behind the scenes. The GOP has been very, very straightforward with their determination to annihilate the IRS. And so what they did already was to attack the funding and rescind the funding that was sent to the IRS, and they're attacking the fact that the IRS has hired agents to get rid of the American people. So let's move forward with the news. Hi, I was mentioned on Mary at We the People News on Rumble. Thank you, Corey. I am so honored that so many of you are supporting the show and sending my articles and videos over to other news outlets. That makes me feel so loved and so supported. Thank you all, family. I appreciate that. So let's see. We went over most of that. We went over how, let's go over this, and I think we're almost done. So did we read this? Yes, we read that. So what we're talking about, family, is how the IRS is being defunded by the GOP. We're talking about how, yes, it's a wrap. We're talking about how the IRS had hired 87,000 agents to harm us and delete Americans, to fire upon us, and how the Republicans are going against them vehemently. Now, that information actually came out in January, but as you all know, just recently the IRS has told the many people, millions of Americans, not to even file taxes. So this is my encouragement to you today, family, to know that things are being done behind the scenes, that the Creator is in control, that God is in control, okay? And that the white hats of the military, they're all working to help us to become free. This is another thing that I wanted to bring before you that actually happened January 9th, the day before the Republicans announced that they were going to defund the IRS. House Republicans passed legislation trying to block new IRS funding. So I told you that they had allotted tens of billions of dollars to the IRS for hiring these agents, training these 87,000 agents that were supposed to investigate us, and that had the signal to go ahead and delete any of us that they found were violating their legalities. That any of us that did not want to pay a portion of or pay on all of our income, they were allowed to delete us. So this funding is something that the Republicans blocked. So let's look at this as abcnews.go.com, and I will also put that in the description section. House Republicans passed legislation trying to block new IRS funding. They said conservatives, listen to this, misleadingly claimed that the money would be for 87,000, would be for the 87,000 new agents, but it was indeed for hiring and training those agents. But they try to always spin the news. They're saying that is a misleading claim, okay? Because they don't want people to know that it's indeed true that they hired these agents and that the Democrats actually gave them the money to do this, to weaponize against we the people. So House Republicans on that Monday night had made good on a campaign promise by approving a bill that would zero out funding from the Inflation Reduction Act that is intended to dramatically increase the IRS's enforcement abilities. And Democrats in the government say target wealthy tax cheats. So they're funny. What they're trying to say was the reason why they hired these agents was to target the wealthy taxpayers and how they were targeting those wealthy people who cheat on their taxes. But what they won't tell you is that a lot of wealthy people don't pay taxes because those wealthy people, a lot of them operate in the private. Okay, a lot of them know that they're state nationals that are operating as sovereigns, and a lot of them just operate in a whole private sector. So they don't pay taxes because they also know that paying taxes is actually voluntary. And they know that the IRS is an unlawful entity. So a lot of them don't pay taxes, but what they'll tell you is that wealthy people don't pay taxes because they're cheaters. No, wealthy people don't pay taxes because they know the law. Wealthy people don't pay taxes because they abide by the republic, the laws of the Republic of America, the Constitution for the United States, and they know how to put their wealth in trust, including their businesses. And when you put your wealth in a trust, that's a part of estate planning. Thank you so much. The trust actually holds and transfers your assets in such a way. It's a notarized document actually that holds and transfer your assets. And it does it way. And so people will say it hides your assets, but no, it just transfer assets from your possession and your property or your possession into the possession of the trust so that you don't own the wealth, your trust own the wealth. Okay, was it Rockefeller that says own nothing, control everything? The wealthy people know to put their land in a trust, put their precious metals in trust, put all of their businesses in trust, put all their money, their wealth, at their life insurance policies, all inside this lawful notarized document that controls, holds, and completely transfers their wealth from themselves into the trust. And it also it states and mandates what is supposed to happen to that money or those assets upon their death. So this is what the wealthy people do. They do not evade paying taxes. They actually just know the law, the real law. Thank you so much, Nancy, Sister Nancy. Thank you for all you do. Sending much love. Thank you. May God, the Creator, Yahweh, who source, bless you with long life, prosperity, and peace. I'm so grateful for the love offering today. So I appreciate you, family. Anytime you bless me with your presence, your prayers, your monetary gifts, I just want you to know that I sincerely, sincerely appreciate you, family. Thank you. So we're going to get back into this article, okay? Conservatives have cast the money another way over pushbacks from the Treasury Department. Our first bill will repeal funding for 87,000 new agents because the government should be here to help you, not go after you. Thank you so much, Kevin McCarthy. Okay, he said the government should be here to help you, not go after you. Declared newly minted House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. I tell you, he's been busy. The first thing they did this year was to attack the IRS. So that's what he said upon taking the gavel early Saturday morning and ushering in a new session under Republican control. So you all know that the Republicans are over the House. You all know that Nancy Pelosi allegedly stepped down. But Kat Kamat, who I think she's actually a representative of Florida. Thank you, Jesus is King. I appreciate you so much. Do you have to wait until June for the USA to default and be free from this system? No, you can defund your life. You can defund your food. You can defund your money. You can defund everything and decentralize your life, money, food, decentralize everything from the government. And how you do that is by not waiting on them, but to declare within yourself that you're free and just operate in a way that you do not consent to these people. So you can, if you choose to go about the way that I admonished, was to write a letter and tell them that you're unable to pay taxes and that you would like them to forgive you of the debt. You can do that, or you can just do what they just told us to do. They said they're telling millions of Americans to hold off on filing the taxes. And you can also take your money out. I'm not a financial advisor, but take your money out of certain institutions if you desire, and you can purchase or roll your fiat dollars into precious metals, which is lawful money, and you can actually start bartering with people. You grow the food for me, or allow me to, pick from your garden, or allow me to glean from your garden, or glean from your farm, and in exchange I'll give you some silver, I'll give you some gold. Because I'm telling you, I don't care what people say. If you take some ounces of gold or portions of gold to somebody for services, I'm inclined to believe that some people would take it. Or instead of offering them gold or silver, you can actually provide another service for them. So you see, when you barter outside the system, and when you pay for services and precious metals, then you're operating outside of the banks. Just having precious metals alone is decentralizing your life from their system. So no, you don't have to wait to June. Do what you can do now to decentralize your life. Thank you so much. Jesus is King. Let me know if I answered your question, because if not, I will do a better job. I would go into more detail. Thank you for your offering. The Creator bless you with abundance, prosperity, and peace. So love, be in Nubian. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for your offering. I tell you, I just feel so loved. I feel so supported, family. Thank you very much. Your offering will be put to great use. I thank you and I appreciate you. So I'm going to get back to this article just to make sure we covered everything. Conservatives have cast the money another way over pushback from the Treasury. Our first bill will repeal funding for 87,000 new IRS agents because the government should be here to help you, he said. Okay, yes, not to harm you. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which analyzes bills for lawmakers, reported in the analysis analysts, I don't know why I can't read today, on Monday, that the GOP's IRS measure, known as the Family and Small Business Taxpayer Protection Act, from Representative Adrian Smith, who was a Republican from Nebraska, would raise the deficit by $114 billion. On Monday, the House passed the proposal in a party line vote, 221 to 210. They passed the proposed party line votes to block new IRS funding, which was supposed to again be used to train 187,000 new agents. So some people said those agents were indeed hired. I don't know if they were indeed hired. I know that that's what they said they were going to do. I know they said they showed pictures that they were training them. And if indeed they hired them, then trust me, they're going to have to they're defunded now, so they're going to have to go home without a job. And any of them, I suppose, that could be trained for righteousness may go on under the umbrella of the United States Treasury Department. But I'm inclined to believe that they're going to get their pink slip, okay, because they were hired for nefarious purposes. So for anyone who's just joining us, family, welcome. Welcome. So for anybody here that are just joining us, then let me just reiterate why we even brought this news before you today. We brought the news before you because the IRS announced that millions of Americans should not file their taxes. Now, they gave their reasons for why you should not file your taxes, but what we see happening is that this is House Bill or House Resolution 25 actually come into play, which was to monitor and eliminate the IRS. Okay, and just to reiterate what that is, for those who are just coming on, is to promote the freedom and fairness and economic opportunity by repealing the income tax and other taxes, abolishing the IRS, and enacting a national tax to be administered primarily by the states. And again, you do that, allow the states to do that, because we're getting rid of the Federal Reserve. I mean, not the Federal Reserve, just the Federal Reserve, but also the federal government, because We don't need the federal government when we have the Constitution for the United States, our republic, our lawful government. So let me finally show you again this article where the IRS told millions of Americans to hold off on filing taxes. So I'm not sure, family, how we'll know which Americans they're talking about, because they said they listed California, Colorado, and they said other states, but they didn't say what those states were. So again, we know that the headquarters for the IRS is actually completely empty. And we know that from citizen journalists and who else? Nancy Drew, from filming live from DC. Here you go. This was CBS News published in the MSN.com news outlet. IRS tells millions of Americans to hold off on tax filing. You see, the IRS is asking millions of taxpayers in California, Colorado, and other states that issued tax rebates last year to hold off on filing taxes. So what I'll do is I'm going to find out which states issued. That's how I'll find out which states issued tax rebates last year. Okay. So they're asking millions to hold off on filing their taxes. The reason they claim is they need to clarify whether the tax rebates that they gave in special funds were considered taxable income. So they said that they're going to provide additional clarity as many states and taxpayers to us, to people who pay taxes, possibly as early as next week. So family members,
really
keep in mind that
so there are no extra stimulus payments.
Here you go. Many states, including Colorado, Illinois,
again.
and South
You
Carolina,
do
those
not
are the
get
states they're
enhanced
talking
child tax credit.
to,
So you might
but
want to
they
pull
didn't
out
go
your
give
2019 return
extensive
as a
list.
way
So keep in
to,
mind that
just to
although
look as a
it looks like
guidepost for
nothing's
what's
happening,
going to be
that
like this year.
behind the
I
scenes,
always pay
a
my
lot
taxes. I just won't
indeed
be
is
on the
happening.
record.
So that's
I've
it,
never not
family.
paid my
I just
taxes.
desire to bring
But the
news
IRS
before
is
you
warning
today
that
to let you know that we over here, we are laying the IRS to peace. And we understand that they had a service that was for actually sending money to the Queen and to the Vatican, and they pretended like our taxes were going to fund the government, to help the government. Oh my God, I don't know if it was supposed to be. Some people say you pay taxes for roads and all that, although I can't understand how that could be so when the roads are jacked up all over the United States of America. But okay, whatever. But we don't need, as Representative McCarthy says, taxes to fund the government. We don't need that at all. We need for the people to have the money in their own possession. And do you know that I found out through my research that before income taxes came along, that the way the United States actually had money was to tax countries with whom we did business. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but we were taxing like things that were imported to our country. So when we did that, when we taxed places like China and other places who were importing things, that was a way for the government to make money. But instead of doing that, they stopped that. They stopped taxing all these other countries and then started turning on we, the people in America, and taxing us. So I'm going to do a deep dive into that and see, how much I can find out as in regards to that as I can. So it is not my desire to keep you up too late. We've already gone over an hour. So let's now transition into asking questions. So family, thank you for indulging me. Thank you for listening to our funeral service and our eulogy of the IRS at the beginning of the show. If you missed that, please go back and listen to the replay, and also look in the description section for all the articles and videos that we covered today, as well as if you would like to, it's getting late, roll over your IRS into a gold IRA, or if you would like to add precious metals to your portfolio, as somebody asked, do we have to wait till July in order to become free? No, you can have sovereignty today. All you have to do is make up your mind that you're sovereign and act as such. And one of the ways that people do that is decentralizing their money, being your own bank. If you desire to do that, contact Miles Franklin, with whom I am an affiliate, and that is the business and company of CEO, who I call the Gold Guru, Andy Shackman. Contact them at info@milesfranklin.com. Send them an email. Let them know you're interested in buying precious metals or you're interested in getting a gold IRA, and let them know that Dr. Kia Pruitt referred you, and you will get the best prices in the industry and the best customer service that we have ever seen in the precious metals industry. So let's get back to the questions. My cousin works for the IRS, and I told her last year they will be shut down, and she didn't believe me. Yet a lot of people who work for the IRS don't have jobs. They were laid off a while ago. So they should believe you, but it's kind of hard for them. Thank you, Roger, if you were talking to me. And even if you weren't, to whomever you were speaking, I'm sure they are grateful for such a wonderful compliment. You know, a lot of people just believe what they see in the news or what they heard. And it's because that's the way we've been conditioned. But they're going to be forced to believe us, family, and to know that we've been telling the truth. So maybe they will have to wait to the EBS, the Emergency Broadcast System announcement, which, by the way, we had a test on October the 2nd, 2018. We had a presidential EBS test on our phones, and we all knew at that time that this test was to check the system to make sure it was working. So the presidential emergency broadcasting announcement was actually created to allow the president to make announcements in a way that they could circumvent or work around the mainstream media. So I do believe, at least I was told years ago that we would have that. And I know if we do, that will wake up the world. Yes, I do expect that. It will have to wake up the world because it will let them know everything that's been going on. And I expect it to happen sometimes this year, hopefully soon, because, I just mentioned that yesterday that the United States of America, our government is preparing for a presidential transition and a monetary transition. And I produced the DOD, Department of Defense document that talked about that. Now, that document was actually created, I want to say it was August of 2020, and it was updated February the 3rd. So go and look at that live that I did on yesterday. It was very detailed, and I brought receipts or proof to let you know that transition is occurring. With the ZIM projects, what we know is that the ZIM is a bond from Zimbabwe. For many of you who don't know, people have been purchasing ZIM bonds, 100 trillions, 50 trillions, hundreds of millions, billion-dollar notes, which is a government bond. It has a promise to pay at the top left-hand corner to pay the bearer upon demand. The way that will work is we will redeem it. I've been told at banks, I don't know anything about these redemption centers that gurus are talking about. I only know about the banks or financial institutions. So we will present them. Yes, HSBC and Wells Fargo will lead the currency exchange. And the way it will work is when you do that, if you desire to do a humanitarian project, it's not something you have to do. I don't think anybody can tell you what you have to do with your money. But once you do that, they'll give you a wealth manager. Once you redeem your bonds or exchange your currency, they will give you a wealth manager if you see fit, help you set up a family office, and give you people to help you to do budgets. They'll help you with your humanitarian project. And what my mentor told me was that those people who do humanitarian projects, you will be protected by Homeland Security. So thank you so much. I don't know about master accounts, but thank you for sharing that, Baja girl. You're welcome. I appreciate that, Queen. So yeah, the criminals that run this town don't allow people to cruise town at night. Funny gas taxes pay for the roads, right? So somebody say you're your own project. Thank you, John Dowling. That's what I've been told. That's what I feel in my soul. If you're holding ZIM, that's what you need. And you can, and I think it's beautiful to create humanitarian projects because that's what we're here to do. We are the humanitarians and the benefactors that will help humanity. Remember, I told you that this is 2023, which when you add up all those numbers, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 3 equals 7, the year of completion, which is God's number. But in the Hebrew tradition, we know that 5783, which is the Hebrew year, according to the Hebrew calendar, is a very special, important year. 5783 is represented by the number 3 in the Hebrew tradition, and I am Hebrew. And that number 3 is actually a letter called the Gimel, Gimmel, or the Gimel. And that letter actually looks like a man walking. What is he walking towards? He is walking towards people who are in need that desire help or need help. So the Gamel, the man walking, this letter that represents 5783 is a benefactor or a humanitarian that walks towards those in need and help them by restoring them with our abundance. So this is why this year is so important, family, because we were created for this purpose and we desire to come here. So this year is very, very important. This is the year for us to help our fellow brothers and sisters who are in need. You didn't get an EBS on your phone. Okay. So yes, you all keep talking to each other. Let's see. Maja girl, I'm so glad you asked that question. It was a very important question that so many people desired to know. Thank you so much. Let's see. Are there any other questions? What about the justice system? All the lawyers and the judges, Brother Jerry Wright, have to be retrained in constitutional law if they desire to practice. They have to cease and desist. If you've seen my video, Motu Proprio, that was a letter that was sent to President Obama July the 4th, 2014. That letter was written by the Pope, but it was sent by way of his attorneys. And in that letter, the Pope, known as Pope Francis, actually said that President Obama is not the president of the United States of America, but he is the president of a corporation. He talked about how the corporation was unlawful, how Obama was a foreign agent, and most presidents are, and how they are actually presiding over a corporation. He also stated that all the 3-letter agencies must cease and desist. He said the United States Marshal, the policy enforcers, we call them police officers, I call them policy enforcers, and lawyers and judges must cease and desist because our time is up, he said. Now, what gave him the authority to write that letter is that the United States Incorporated, or the United States Corporation, actually was owned by the Pope and the Vatican. Okay, it was owned by the Vatican, so he had the authority to say we must cease and desist. So essentially what he was saying was our time was up, it's over, it's a wrap. He said we got to stop this now, we must cease and desist, and if we do not, then General Ham will be put over the army, better known as the Grand Army of the Republic, and all of these entities will be arrested and have their assets frozen and accosted. So they will take away our assets if we don't cease and desist, he said. Does this sound familiar? Hello, can we call to the judges table? Let's call before us Executive Order 13818, seizing the assets of those that are involved in crimes against humanity. So he said our assets will be frozen, and these people, he didn't say our, but he said all of those who's operating under the United States Incorporated, including lawyers and judges, that this will happen if nobody, cease and desist, or you will be arrested and have your assets confiscated and frozen. So the lawyers and judges will have to cease and desist because they work for the British Accredited Registry. That's why they passed a bar exam, meaning they work for the British Crown. They will have to stop, and if they desire to practice law, then they have to be retrained in constitutional law. And that is actually a principle of NASARA, the National Economic Security and Reformation Act. So there's a lot of scams and misinformation, absolutely, to fool people, yes, and make you believe you're still a slave, yes, which is why they still have us calling ourselves citizens. Now, the white hats have to say they're doing things on behalf of the citizens because we've called ourselves citizens for so long instead of understanding, overstanding, or knowing that we're sovereign. XRP is great, as is XLM. X marks the spot. John says, thank you, John. I appreciate you. Good evening, Spirit Walker. You said I'm a night owl and a workaholic. I think so too. I think I am a workaholic. I used to have to be in bed till at 10 o'clock, but I love what I do. And family, let this be encouragement for you, because when I was like a child, I always loved to read and write, and I had diaries and journals. And I started a biography, an autobiography on myself when I was in elementary school, and I wanted to publish it. But I've always been good at journalism and reporting. I was on a journalism team in high school. I took public speaking in high school. I worked for the newspaper, and I really wanted to do journalism, but the university that I attended, which actually paid for my education, I went to two universities in undergrad, Berea in Berea, Kentucky, and Shawnee State University in Portsmouth, Ohio. And neither of them had journalism programs, but I took English, public speaking, that type of thing, but not journalism. And then I had a family. I married at 18, and I had children while I was in college. I was a foster mom, so I had foster children from the time I was 19. 19, when I had my first son, I became a foster mother of 3 children, 9, 11, and 12 years old, because their dad just wasn't able to take care of them. He was looking in the community. Back in those days, you didn't go straight to the CPS or adoption agencies or anything. You asked people in the community to help you take care of your children. So that's what I did. I became a foster parent at 19, and since we had children, I stayed home and I actually raised my children. I worked in the family daycare that my sister-in-law owned. I worked in a family school teaching that my sister also owned. Thank God she did that, and she put me over the daycare, over the administration of the school, and I taught in the schools. And then later on, after my children were much older, I went to work for the University of Louisville School of Medicine. So I worked with medical students, pre-medical and pre-dental students, and medical students. I coordinated programs for them. I taught. I did personal development workshops. I helped them with financial aid, housing, counseling, because I do have a psychology background. So many things. I was a project director, program director, academic counselor, but my kids were much older. They were like in high school by the time I actually stopped working for our family school and started working in the medical school. But my point is, I did that because, without a journalism degree, I wasn't able to actually work in the news, work as a reporter. However, I've always had this passion for writing, public speaking, which is why I became a minister as a teenager, preaching, becoming a prophesying, becoming a prophet, an ordained evangelist, doing those type of things. But I always wanted to report the news. But I didn't have the opportunity without having the degree. But the Creator opened up a door when 45 became the commander-in-chief for me to report on this news. But I've been reporting on social media, like my Facebook page, since 2008, 2009, just stuff that I heard, But when 45 became the president, I was able to, really speak. Go on podcasts, like the doors just flung open. Go on podcasts, have my own podcast, have my own channels, and help a lot of people come to know this information. So, I'm a workaholic because it's my passion. It's what I love to do. It comes natural. It's like a fire, like the scripture says, Jeremiah says, like a fire shut up in my bones. It won't let me rest at night. I gotta work. I gotta read. I have to study. I have to research. I have to get on here and report the news. So family, it doesn't matter what things look like. When you're passionate about something, the Creator will make a way. And when I first started, I was not making a cent. I was not making a penny until last summer. After years and years of speaking on Facebook and just a few years of speaking on YouTube, I just did what I naturally love to do. And I was reporting on geopolitical news and economics, and the creator opened the way. So finally, I'm being compensated for the work that I do. So thank you so much. I appreciate your gratitude. I love what I do. I do it because I love people. Yes, banks are closing because they're not Basel III and Basel IV compliant. And Basel III and Basel IV compliancy just means that they must have gold in their coffers. They must presidential transition from the old one, from the current one, fake one that we have now, possibly to a new one, or possibly back to the man we know as the 19th president of the United States. So they had to acknowledge gold as a tier 1 asset and have gold, recognize gold as a tier 1 asset, which just means that gold is money, and have gold and silver to back their positions. Basel III and Basel IV compliancy also stated that the banks had to become transparent, that banks could no longer steal our money or use our money to trade on the stock market, and they had to change their credit and lending practices. So if they haven't done all that, family, then they had to close, and that's what we see happening. Credit unions, somebody just sent me an email today that said credit unions are possibly and most likely more safe than the banks. But so that's what I heard. Thank you so much, John Dowling. I appreciate you. That's what I heard, family. Yeah, you don't trust new vehicles. They're made cheaply. Yeah, the ones that are made now. So let me see if you have any more questions before we head on out. 2023 equals God's perfection. And this is also the year of restitution, according to, hi, Kanita, Damien says, the year of restitution, is it restitution? Retribution, I'm sorry, according to the Hebrew tradition, 5783. For us, it represents the number 3 and a Gimel, which is a letter that looks like a man walking. He is a benefactor or humanitarian walking towards those that are in need and helping him. And it's also the year of retribution, paying back or compensating those people who need to get their just dues. Hi, Patriot Mom. It's always good to see you. We don't need to be a slave to any system anymore. That's right. And we must never allow this to happen again. So family, it looks like there are no more questions. I am so happy to see you all. I am going to wrap up for tonight. It's 12:39 a.m. It's always my great pleasure to bring news for you today, and always my pleasure to answer questions. Again, hi Laura, if you desire to roll over your IRA into a gold IRA, or add precious metals to your portfolio, contact our good friend Andy Sheckman, who will be here on Tuesday, the CEO and Gold Guru, CEO of Miles Franklin, also the president of this company, has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau with no complaints. He has excellent customer service, and he's approaching $9 billion in sales. Contact our good friend Andy at info@milesfranklin.com. He will send you a list of his prices, and he will send you his weekly specials, which we always have, and he will send you any information that you need. And if you leave your number in that email, he will have someone to call you back. I love you too. I love you all to life. He will get somebody to call you all back and offer you the best customer service in the industry and the best prices. So please let them know that Dr. Kia Pruitt referred you. And we're doing it this way until we get our website up to par. It is under construction, milesfranklin.com. So you're welcome, family. It is always my pleasure to serve you. My name is Dr. Kia Pruitt, and I am so glad to be here. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you. Somebody made a comment on one of the videos. They said she must teach preschool and kindergarten students, the way she gets all excited when she speaks to her supporters. So, guess what? I actually do love working with the kindergartners, first graders, and second graders. I never knew I would like that, seeing that I come from a higher education administrative background, working in administration, working in student affairs, and I was trained to become a dean. But in the school system, I like high school students, but I'm just, venturing out to working with the little ones. And I hadn't done that since mine were little ones. They're all in their 30s now. So I'm realizing that I really do like that age, and maybe because I'm very active in my grandchildren's life. So thank you so much. I am so honored that you're here. So yes, thank you all for answering each other's questions. Yes, somebody told us that Zim agro checks are a good investment. So you can find those actually on eBay and possibly Banknote World. You want to talk to me and catch up? The Freedom Bohemian? Okay, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That would be my great pleasure. For now, email me at kiapruitt@gmail.com. But I do have an email address that I'm going to announce sometime this week or next week. So, family, again, it's my great pleasure being here. You're welcome, Eddie. I'm always glad to see you. I'm glad to present the news to you all and to encourage you. So you're a retired teacher. Awesome. Family, I'm going to get out of here. It's getting late. I'm getting tired. And although I am a workaholic, I love doing this work, but I need to get rest so that we can see you in the morning. So my name is Dr. Kia Pruitt. I trust and I hope that I said something to raise your vibrations and inspire you to create the most amazing, magnificent life that you desire and deserve. Good night, family. Safe travels as you astral project in your dreams. And if you have something on your mind or something that you're pondering and you need solutions, then before you go to sleep, think about the thing that you would like to resolve and determine in your mind that when you go to sleep, you will resolve it in the astral realm or in your dream state. This is what our ancestors would do, or what our elders would do. That's why they said, I'll sleep on it. They would think about it before they go to bed, and they would anticipate their higher self to actually give them the answers, or their creator. So family, it will be resolved. Mark my words. You'll figure it out in your sleep. Okay. In the whatever realm you're in, the REM realm or whatever, you will figure it out. So family, I love you so much. Good night. Take care. Bye-bye. Rest well. I love you with all my heart and soul. Night, night.